Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have a special episode for you. We have an event coming up very, very quickly that we wanted to share, and so we're putting this out as quickly as possible. But before we chat about that, we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Steve Fields is the founder of the nation's largest long-term disability law firm representing individuals. He is also the executive producer of Brian Sanders' highly anticipated documentary series called Food Lies. He was fortunate to meet Jessica Apple, and the two of them co-founded the nonprofit Metabolic Revolution with the mission of spreading awareness about the powerful healing that metabolic therapies can provide. In 2023, Steve suffered a severe reaction to a vaccine that caused systemic inflammation affecting his heart, lungs, kidneys, liver, and gallbladder. As he was recovering from the injuries to his different organs, the ongoing inflammation triggered systemic lupus. At that point, he decided he did not want to merely manage his symptoms, but wanted to reverse his disease and get back to 100%. After seeing many specialists and trying many different things to get better, he went on an animal-based diet that put his lupus into remission after 9 weeks, with all of his symptoms resolving. He is now committed to improving people's lives through helping them embrace a new paradigm of health that addresses the root causes of chronic disease and realizes the transformative power of nutrition. Steve Fields, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Yeah, thank you. It's an honor for me to be a part of your show.
Oh, it's an honor to host you. I'm thinking about all of the things you've gone through and the dates. 2023, that just was not that long ago that you went through all of these things. And I can't understress like the amount of passion that you have for sharing this message now after going through such incredible healing. You and I were talking off air that like this kind of a movement is really special in the way that it triggers something beyond more than just like a normal kind of passion for something. It makes you want to get out there and share the message and tell as many people. And we can see just even in a short amount of time how involved you are in the community already. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it is amazing. And it's in a rather short period of time. It was, probably never forget the date. So it was March 12th of last year that I had first had the vaccine and then had the problems. It started the same day. And, kind of the somewhat short version of it is I kind of continued to go downhill for 8 days until I was hospitalized. And at that point, I had so much inflammation. I had pulmonary embolisms, heart arrhythmia, my kidney function had dropped, my liver was hit, and my gallbladder was in really, really rough shape. And they actually wanted to take it out, but I was in such bad shape that they couldn't do surgery. And I'm glad that they didn't actually take it out. And while I was hospitalized, they were doing everything under the sun just to try to get me better. And eventually, being anybody spend any time in a hospital, it's good that you're there for a reason, but also it's not a very healing environment. And I just said, I want to leave. So I ordered home oxygen because I was still dealing with clots, and got discharged, and then started to get better, at least past the acute stage. And that's when I started having these other symptoms. My heart, that was one of the primary ones where I had a high heart rate, and my blood pressure, at one point I remember like in July, it was like 177 or 125, very concerning, obviously.
Sorry.
And then I started to develop extreme fatigue and then in my lower body. So basically from my hips down to my feet, I began having issues with inflammation and more difficulty walking. And then I just had basically pain 24/7, which of course that has a ripple effect of not being able to sleep and, a host of other things. And that's when I like, okay, well, this is something a little bit different than what I originally dealt with the other organs. And I went and got tested. And that's when it's real good doctors that started looking at more at antibody testing. And that's when I came back with positive for systemic lupus. And initially I was hoping it was maybe just drug induced. So it was going to be a temporary thing, but unfortunately it was systemic. And at that point, I was, that was last summer, and I was in pretty rough shape. And that's when I decided, well, I got myself into this. And I'd always in the past considered myself a very healthy person. I worked out every day, thought I had a good diet, and, was in pretty good shape. And so I thought, well, I need to figure this out. I still have my doctors and listen to the doctors, but my health is my responsibility. And so I just took ownership of that. And that's probably the best thing that I did, along with becoming just kind of a student of nutrition and health. And I just became obsessed with learning everything I could, from, finding, great people in this space that have written books, that are, people like Nina Teicholz, and, a whole host of other people, Kate Shanahan, I love Dr. Kate. And then podcasts like yourselves, and, there's the Peak Human podcast, and a lot of other ones. And that's what I did. I just started to absorb that in kind of my journey. And it really was a journey. And even with that, I tried everything under the sun, really, to try and get better, with knowing that I didn't want to just look at this from a long-term standpoint, that this is something I'm gonna have to deal with the rest of my life. So everything I tried everything from Helminth therapy, which is ingesting trachea sweep parasites to try and balance out my T cells, to, some other short-term medications, a lot of other things, and nothing really seemed to work. And so I thought, well, let me continue on this journey. And that's when I eventually made a change in my nutrition. And again, I was willing to try anything, and I've always kind of tweaked my diet. And that's when I did, basically, I just kind of flipped the switch, and I had, take a step back. My diet before, again, I thought was healthy, and I suppose maybe in some circles it would be. It was what I would consider kind of a modified paleo diet, but it was very, very heavy on plant food. So I would start my day with a giant salad, and, I would still eat some meat, but I was still under the impression that the more plants I ate, the healthier I was going to be. And I'm not anti-plant, but I think, in retrospect, I had my balance wrong. And so I went from that prior diet, which again I thought was healthy, to an animal-based diet. And so it wasn't a carnivore diet necessarily, or at least how maybe some people would define it. But I still ate some dairy and eggs and other things, but I cut out all seed oils. That's thanks to, especially the work of Dr. Kate. And I think that was a huge thing for me. And then I also was very careful of the sourcing of my meat. Well, all the animal products, but especially my meat, which I never really had paid as close attention to as I should have. So, I sourced from local farms here, and a couple other, farms around the country. I would have stuff shipped in, which I still do. And so that was a big change for me. And then, of course, basically stopped eating out, primarily because of the sourcing of the food, and then trying to stay away from seed oils. And, it's just an adjustment period, but I mean, I'm pretty disciplined. So making the switch wasn't that difficult, just changing my habits. And I was driven to get better. So it was kind of a no-brainer for me. And at first things didn't really change, but I kind of reached that around 9-week mark, and I was like, well, now this is different. And, I still kind of, maybe honestly, even now, I'm a little, I'm a very positive person. I'm thinking it's going to be back tomorrow. So I'll eventually get past that, but a little PTSD from the whole thing. But it made a huge change. And not only was it, because I had so much stuff going on. So my heart issues resolved, heart rate, blood pressure back to normal. The lower body pain, it becomes so debilitating, that's resolved. And the other thing, and this is a switch that was even a bigger thing from before I got injured, was I'd say, like, cognitively or mentally, I feel better than even before. And I know that you've talked about this, and other people that have kind of been on maybe a similar journey or a change in their nutrition. And I feel so much better mentally. And it's not, and it's nothing that I was, intending on or even conscious of. And then people around me have noticed it too. So that's been kind of an amazing effect of the changes that I made.
Wow.
Which in retrospect were fairly easy changes, to a certain degree. And I'll say another thing too, and I'll, you can tell me to stop talking, but I get excited to talk about this stuff. The other thing that I've noticed, and I don't know if some of your other guests have mentioned this, is my relationship with food. I had looked at, and again, this is not an intentional thing. I had always, done most of my own cooking, but I kind of looked at it maybe even more as a chore, something I had to do. And it's almost, for lack of a better term, almost like a Zen kind of a thing for me now, where it's whether it's buying the food, preparing the food, or even cleaning up, I enjoy all aspects of it. Can't tell you why or what changed, but it's a thing, and it's just and maybe it's, I know what the positive effect it's having on me now. I don't know, but it's an interesting kind of a sidelight thing that is it's a real thing for me, that how I look at it, my relationship with food and nutrition just fundamentally changed.
Wow. Steve, that's amazing. One of the very cool things about, again, the recency of you going through all of this is I was not familiar with any of that. And so I really appreciated hearing that journey and some of those things that you notice along the way. Especially, yeah, it is difficult to describe, isn't it? Like your relationship with food. I think back when I was doing the same thing like you were describing before with like the big salads. And it's like, it's such a time requirement to prepare all of this stuff, to shop for all of this stuff. I was stopping at this multiple different stores, and you try to prep the best you can, and even being really mindful and trying your best, you're still chucking out tons of food at the end of the week, and just knowing like tonight I'm gonna have an amazing steak, and nobody can make a steak that I could buy at a steakhouse better than I can make one in a few minutes. And it's so enjoyable. It's easy to prepare. It's not that expensive, and it
Yeah.
comes out amazing. I'm so satisfied and fulfilled. It sounds like you had that same thing, and I think it's so underrated. Also, the mental change, feeling so different in your brain, dealing with anxiety much better, depression much better. Your lows are never as low. The ability to have stressful things happen, and they just don't touch you as much, or you can step back and observe them and like problem solve. Where you hear other people like freaking out if they lose their keys, and you just like can think through solutions so much better. It's totally different.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah. Back to the food part. One thing that I get excited about, and I've never been a person that would like take pictures of my food and things I made. I've become kind of that person where I'll get, I'll the slow cooker, and I'll make, a roast or something like that, and I'll be so excited that I have, 3 or 4 meals out of it, and I've got everything kind of set for the week, and just, and that's the planning and kind of very intentional aspect of it, of the shift I made. And but yeah, I mean, it's there's kind of no turning back once you see that, and not only the effect that it had on me, but then once, part of it again is that preceded that was just the self-education. And once I learned, you know, more about the, not only the history of nutrition and especially like from an evolutionary standpoint, but then, what the science has been, and I wouldn't even say current science, what the science has been maybe for decades, but a lot of it's been either disregarded, buried, and other things like that, that it's not, it's not even necessarily, it's not new. It's just, kind of hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, that's very well said. I don't want to miss this. I want to go back to that point where you started to learn about some of this stuff. I think that's really pivotal. So I want to return there. You've told us a
Sure.
little bit about your past before then, and like you said, you were always into health. You were eating what you thought was a clean diet. Tell us a little bit more about your journey through health earlier in your life. Like again, what did those workouts look like for you? How did the diet
Sure.
evolve over time? Like again, not
Yeah.
knowing your own personal story, I'd love to hear more of that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my diet has, again, it's all a matter of perspective, because I thought that in the past I had a fairly good diet, but with new information, I kind of reflect and look at things differently. But I would follow, what I thought was a pretty good paleo diet, and then but that was for a number of years, and thinking back, this is, maybe, decades ago. I actually felt pretty darn good. But then over time, it would kind of change. And then for a while, I became a very, very strict vegan. Again, thinking this is the way. And, I mean, I think very differently now, but I honestly thought that was the healthiest thing. And that was probably the worst I've ever felt while I was doing that. But I thought, and maybe other people that have done this can kind of relate, but I thought, well, no, this is the right thing. So even though I felt lousy, and I mean everything from like trying to keep my weight up, to testosterone tanking, to just feeling lousy. But eventually it's just like, okay, well, as I started to learn a little bit more, I'm like, well, maybe this isn't the way. But I still had that carryover of plants are so healing and so good that I still want that to make up a large portion of my diet. And so that still was a carryover from when I was a vegan. And then I, kind of just continued along with that, thinking that, having spinach 3 times a day and having, all these salads and everything else was really going to keep me the healthiest. And, and looking long term too, I wanted to be healthy. I care about my health span. And I think I was just off, and I just didn't have the right information in the way I look at it. And, thankfully, again, going through the journey of learning, and I'm still learning. I think it's going to be never ending. But I think that at least I'm definitely heading in the right direction, even though maybe it's still a bit of a circuitous path. But I feel pretty good about that. With making some tweaks along the way. And in terms of just my overall view of health, I've tried to always prioritize that. So, I start my day, with a workout every morning. That's part of my routine. Doing sauna at night. I do a pre-workout cold plunge. I do, full body red light therapy. So, I mean, I've done a lot of stuff, and then just trying to be active. I keep kettlebells at the office. So I get off a call and I'll, do some farmer carries and, just try to do the best I can with having an office job. So yeah, I mean, so that's, and actually, and I continued to try to continue a lot of that even after I got sick, maybe as part of me just trying to, assert, who's got control over my body. So I had to modify some of the stuff I did, when I tried to put myself under hormetic stress, so ice bath and saunas. I had to stop that for a while because my body just couldn't take it, and it was just kind of dangerous. So I took a break from that. But I tried to just stay active, just with some modifications, because even mentally, I thought if I do nothing after being active my whole life, that mentally is going to just crush me. So I tried to stay active, even though, there's the pain and limitations and all that. And I'm still glad that I did that approach. But yeah, and so my health approach now, I always had kind of prioritized being active and working out, and I still do, but I don't look at nutrition as secondary. If anything, I have kind of flipped it, or maybe they're at the very least side by side, but I see the power of nutrition and diet so much through such a better lens now. And that I would put that primary over being active and working out. I don't think anybody wants to be sedentary, but that's been a shift for me in terms of that, the importance of that from a health standpoint.
Yeah, they all run together, right? Like you need the exercise, you need the nutrition, all the other things you mentioned, the temperature exposure, the red light, all of those things all run together. We need all of them. But I do agree with you that if you pull the nutrition lever, I think it makes it more likely that you're going to get more wins in all of those other categories. You know what I mean? Like I go to a low carbohydrate conference and I see a disproportionate amount of people wearing minimalist footwear, for example, and everybody knows about saunas and cold plunges and that kind of thing. So yeah, I really love that. Going back to that pivotal moment where you started to learn a different way, I would assume if somebody were to Google, reversing lupus or whatever you punched in to kind of find this information, I would not assume that you would have found some of the names that you mentioned, like Nina Teicholz or Dr. Kate.
Yeah.
How did you find this stuff?
No, there really wasn't. And I probably spent way more time online searching than I should have. But so I kind of zoomed out and said, okay, well, most of the stuff you find regarding things like lupus or, some other diseases it's not curable. And here are all the litany of things you can do to manage your symptoms. And there's some stuff out there in the web about, well, some people that here's what you should do. But it's like, that's just, kind of anecdotal. And so what I tried to do is look at, well, who are people that really seem to get it, who really are deep into this area, even though they're not talking necessarily about curing a specific thing. People like Nina or there's a variety of people out there that are so well versed in this area, so passionate about it, or even, Dr. Kate, that understand the science and the history. And so I just looked at that and I'm like, well, and I didn't know going in, I didn't really have any specific guidance on this, but I thought, well, I'm going to try this. I'm going to do this because it makes sense in general. And, you read about other, like ability to reverse some other diseases, especially like maybe like diabetes, or there's people that have success with cancer. And even though that's not what I had, I thought, well, maybe I could apply these same principles and just kind of make my own formula for success and getting better. And so it made sense in terms of everything that I kept reading about having, something that's more like an animal-based diet with well-sourced foods, of course, and then, just getting into the nutrient density and all that other stuff that I think has made a huge difference. And you mentioned Brian Sanders, and he likes to say, it's not only what you're eating, but it's what you're not eating. And it's always kind of, and I know other people probably said that, but that's really stayed with me because I think it's very true. And it's probably hard to untangle, the two, but I think, staying away from a lot of things and then also focusing on really, really the types of foods we are meant to be eating, and then having those foods be the best that you can find. And maybe it's oversimplifying it, but that's really, I think that, kind of the strategy that I did. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. And then it just makes a lot of sense too. So it's not some kind of, I don't look at it as a fringe thing at all. I look at it as, well, this is how we used to eat and we should be eating.
Agreed. Yeah. It's cool that it works both ways. Like you're explaining, like not only are you adding the most nutrient dense foods, you're removing all the most inflammatory, crappy foods, and the combination is really where it's at. So very
Yeah.
well explained. I love that. You mentioned Brian. How did you get involved with Brian's project?
Well, it's interesting. So part of my education was, the pod, people that have great podcasts like yourselves. It's an amazing resource for discovering people that are experts in this field. And so that, I discovered his podcast, which is Peak Human, and I think he's interviewed like maybe 150 people, probably a lot of the same people that and and they're amazing. And so, that was part of it. And then I knew that he'd been working on his documentary series. So, which the whole, his whole mission behind that is just wonderful. I mean, he's really wants to change the world. And I think that's, and people that are kind of in this space realize that you have to do it in a number of different ways. It's not just, and it has to be kind of a grassroots approach, not a top-down approach to make these big changes. And so I reached out to him and I was asking him about it and kind of where he was at, and and all the amazing work he'd already done over the course of several years. And he was getting close, and then they just needed, just a little push to kind of, get across the finish line. So that's when I signed on as an executive producer, and just to, because I saw and see the potential for his documentary series, along with some other people that are working on. I know you've had some guests that are working on some amazing projects. And I think that we need more of that. People like to digest things in video form, and it needs to be engaging, and things like, podcasts, and it's, and they need to get, hear these certain voices that aren't necessarily always heard. They're a little drowned out by a lot of the stuff that's in the mainstream media, or medical organizations and other places that unfortunately have an outsized role.
Yeah.
So I reached out, and he's a filmmaker based out of Boston. I went down and visited with him, and he's just an amazing person, and he is really a connector of people too. So he really is. His passion is palpable if you ever spend any time with him. And so we connected, and yeah, so that's kind of my connection with Brian.
Cool. Wow. I don't think Brian gets as much credit as he deserves. Certainly in my life, I need to give him more credit, because this is back in 2018. I'm, learning about this stuff through using metabolic carts, and we're doing weight loss contests through the gym I was working at, and finding that if I ignored what the gym said and I gave people low carb meal plans, it worked way better. Was amazing. And so now I've got to like learn about this and unlearn all the crap that I learned in the first decade of my career.
Yeah.
And going back, like Peak Human was one of the first podcasts I ever listened to. And if you go back and look at like who were the guests in the first like 10 or 20 episodes, you find Dr. Georgia Ede and Sally
Yeah.
Norton and Dr. Sean Baker. And like it's amazing some of the people that he found and really kind of made a lot more popularized through his podcast. So I think that was instrumental in so many people's understanding of true metabolic health, if you want to say it that way. And I was fortunate enough this year to be at Hack Your Health 2024. He took the stage and previewed episode 1. It was fantastic. Episode 1 was really, really, really good. Very highly produced. Feedback from a buddy of mine who was watching the conference with us. We even reviewed this in a different episode. And one thing that he said is, since he's a high school teacher, that movie would be awesome to show parents, and the parents and the students would be able to pick up on it and understand it. So he has done a really, really good job of that. What do you speak as far as like the quality of what's been done so far?
Yeah. I totally agree. And I think that, again, it needs to get a big audience. And that's the goal, is to, the best case scenario would be have a large streaming platform so as many people can see it. And if anything, it kind of provides, a counterbalance to a lot of the other stuff that's out there that's more, red meat and fat is going to kill you. Stay away from it. And, everybody should be moving toward just eating plants. There's obviously a lot out there. So, I mean, it's really needed, along with other people that are spreading the word in different ways.
Yeah. So I have to ask, everybody is asking, it's all anybody talks about. Do you know when or what platform the general public might be able to see this and access this? Do you have an idea?
I don't have an answer for that yet, but I mean, it's moving forward pretty quickly. So yeah, I mean, it's still a work in progress, but I feel very, very optimistic that I think he's really tapped into a balance of, the science and the history and information, but it's the opposite of something that's dry and boring. It's so engaging, and that's a product of, I think, the work they've done with not only the people that they interviewed, but just all the stuff that goes into making a great thing, of the editing and just the whole team that he's put together. I think what I've seen, they've just done an amazing job. So I do think it will be very well received. It just needs to get out there in a big way.
Yeah, I see both sides of this. A lot of feedback we get is like, we've heard about this for years and years and years at this point, much earlier than when you got involved with it. And nobody has been able to see it yet. I'm so glad that he said something on the stage. Brian got up there and he said, look, this has been way harder than I anticipated. This has taken way more time and way more money. And it's just me and like one or two other people that are really trying to nail this thing down. And so I'm really glad that he said that. And it made me see things a lot differently and put myself in his shoes and how difficult this project must be to take on.
I mean, there's the financial aspect, and then just the learning curve. I mean, he literally, just based on wanting to do something and help people, he's like, well, I'm gonna figure this out. And I mean, I think he did, but it's a tall order to learn how to become a filmmaker and then connect with these people. And he traveled around the world. So yeah, I mean, it's what he's been able to do, even though it's taken a long time, is still pretty amazing.
Yeah, it really is. Well, awesome. Let's shift our attention to your latest project that you co-founded with Jessica Apple, which is Metabolic Revolution. Jessica Apple is amazing. I got to meet her for the first time earlier this year at Dave Feldman's conference in Las Vegas. She is just a warrior at 4'6", or however tall she is. Not very tall, but she's just an absolute warrior. We got to interview Sam, her brother, who was amazing. So tell us about this project and how this all got started.
Yeah, well, it's funny enough. So I got connected to Jess through Nina Teicholz, and she, I emailed back, and we'd emailed back and forth regarding just kind of her work. And she said, hey, there's this person that you should meet, and it's Jess. And also, by the way, there's this rally that's happening, and I don't know, it'd be great if you could come. And so then the next email I sent is, well, I booked my ticket, I'm coming to the rally. And then I got connected with Jess. So I mean, it happened very fast. Again, this is me just I'm like, the time is now. There's no, and I'm gonna, really jump at these opportunities. And Jess kind of told me about Metabolic Revolution and her idea, which I really, really love because it was something that's very broad based and trying to, because a lot of people in the space might have, their niche of expertise or what they're trying to do. And I like that, which is great. And I like that, Jess's idea of, well, we want to really bring everybody together if possible, because there's more similarities, I think, among us than dissimilarities. And I think most people have a similar mission. And so, but also realizing that this needs to be a grassroots movement. And so it's trying to get the awareness and the education out there, which just resonated with me, to, the idea of trying to have some deeper meaning through being a catalyst for bigger change. And, going back to, the work that I've done, just in the legal field, and I think we mentioned this before we started, with a lot of it is in the disability area. And most of our clients will suffer, not necessarily something that's traumatic in nature. A lot of it is, or the most of it is people suffering from chronic disease. And so, we see every day the effect that that has on people and their families. It's not just even economic. Of course, there's economic costs, but just quality of life. There's mental components to that, even if it's a physical manifestation. And so the idea that, and to me, this is, gets me out of bed energized every day. I can't think of something that could have a bigger impact on people's lives than improving their health, and through nutrition. And so that's what Jess, her kind of vision was, and to be, at all levels, really. But I mean, really, I think that the potential for change, and I think Metabolic Revolution realizes that, is there's not a one size fits all approach, but let's whether it's a rally or producing videos or newsletters or just being on podcasts, or we have a whole other list of things that we want to do to bring people together to not only educate and provide awareness, but then how do we make this change, whether it's through the medical field, through physicians, or dietitians, or I mean, even the food, the dietary guidelines, they're coming up for the next 5 years. That's obviously a huge point of contention in people in this area, right? That's has such a ripple effect to what's served in schools, to what our doctors saying, and to try to get people to kind of rise up and say, enough's enough. We need to have these changes. So yeah, I mean, it's just an amazing opportunity, and Jess is so passionate, and her story is so amazing, to be part of that. And then we're still figuring out kind of what the roadmap is, but we know that, but we're thinking very, very big in terms of what. But I mean, because you have to think big because the problem's so big. I mean, I was listening to somebody just a while ago on a podcast, and they talked about with nutrition and in our health, that we're at the point of a moral crisis. And I completely agree. I think, knowing what we know, it is a moral crisis that we're not making these changes, or at least giving people options and the right information to make an informed decision.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. Your website already looks so good. You're right about how quick some of this stuff is coming into people's field of consciousness. It was like a week or two ago. I had no idea any of this existed. For you, like you said, like, this is all happening really quick. It must feel like a freight train at this point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
since it is so new, I was going to ask you about kind of the structure of the nonprofit itself. It's more going to be the umbrella for all the different things you mentioned, right? Like the podcasting, the newsletter, conferences, potentially the rally is included in those things, but that's not the only or primary thing that you guys will be doing.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's really, I guess you could call it, because it's a young nonprofit. It's almost kind of like the kickoff. And and not that it's going to be just a one and done thing. I mean, I think that it needs to be ongoing, whether it's things like rallies, or just other ways to get the word out and get people to know that there's this other information out there, this other model for nutrition and health. And it's going to take, I think, people like yourselves and all kinds of people in this space, not necessarily all coming together in one group, but understanding that we can all independently but collaboratively work together for change. And and then so again, like I said, we're still trying to figure out exactly how that's all going to work, but we know the potential for change is there, and we think that it's individuals. I mean, there's, I think there's businesses and organizations that can also play a part and that are also in this space. But I think that the real power is in individual people. And even, in that same vein of thought, people that have positively been impacted or personally impacted, like I said, all the kind of N of ones. I mean, like myself, I mean, once you realize the transforming power of nutrition for yourself, it's really hard to be quiet about it because you want other people to know about it, to realize the same benefits. And yeah, so I mean, I'm not out proselytizing, but if anybody asks my opinion, I will embrace that and really run with it.
I love it. That's amazing. One of the fun things was going onto your website and clicking the Meet the Team tab, and you scroll through. There's probably 15 people there. I know all but maybe like two or three of them, and what a fantastic list of people. You can't even fathom how awesome all these people are.
Yeah, the speakers for the rally's on October 13th in the afternoon, and just right at the National Mall in DC. And yeah, it's Nina Teicholz, Tony Hampton, Chris Palmer, Georgie, Dr. Lustig. I mean, so many, I'm leaving people out, so many just amazing people that are so passionate. And they've been in this space for, some for decades. Yeah, I mean, it's just, we're so lucky to have them be part of it, and a lot of other people too. There's lots of volunteers, and of course, Jess and Julie King has done a ton of work. Yeah, just an amazing group. So I mean, yeah, I think it's going to be amazing opportunity to have a big presence. And we're encouraging as many people that are, that can make it, that are in the area, or even if you have to, do a little bit of a travel. I think it's a way to have our voice be heard and to kind of, stir the pot a little bit.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, I'll never forget this. This was Low Carb Denver 2023. We were doing a panel discussion, and on the stage were like 6 of the most well-respected cardiologists having this amazing discussion, moderated by either Eric Westman or Nina Teicholz. I can't remember which. And Amy Berger is sitting next to me, and she goes, "We cannot have all of these amazing people on stage at once. If the stage were to collapse all of a sudden and all these people died at once, we cannot have that. These people are too amazing. So now you've got a responsibility in Washington, D.C. to keep these people separated because if some vegan activist group comes and tries to do something to all of them all at once, that's way too much. That's way too much to lose."
That's too funny.
Oh man. Okay, so yeah, so tell us a little bit more about the rally itself. I think it's cool that you are doing it in Washington D.C. at the mall itself. Was that difficult? I don't imagine they just allow anybody to do that at any time, or do that. I know nothing about that.
Yeah, it's a process. So again, we had some great people helping out with that, with the permitting process. And I mean, yeah, you have to go through, you can't just kind of show up. I mean, I guess you could, but then that's kind of a different event. We wanted this to be very orderly and by the books. So yeah, you go through an application process, and you have to find a place, and is it available, and then we wanted a place too that had the setting was right. There's enough room for a lot of people, because we expect a lot of people to show up. They had the right kind of a stage, and then all the different moving parts to make it happen in terms of the speakers. And and again, we're so grateful that the speakers that are coming are willing to, I mean, it's their time, and so we're very, very grateful for that. And just yeah, just to get media coverage too. So I mean, it's that's part of the awareness, and it's really not, it's meant to be a very positive and almost celebratory rally, in a sense, for looking forward for what positive change can occur. I mean, there's some aspects of, yeah, we need to change the dietary guidelines, and we have all these hurdles and problems that exist, but it's very much of a positive vibe for the rally. And I think knowing the speakers, that's how they approach it. They're very serious about what they're doing, what they're communicating, but they're all very positive about what can be. And so that's we want. I mean, we're having drummers and marching band. I mean, it's that kind of an environment that we want to create. That this is something to be excited about, because the potential is so great.
Yeah. Interesting. On the website, you talk about what your main priorities are, and you've obviously talked about some of those, like the nutrition guidelines.
Yeah.
What are some of the other key points that you want our nation's leaders to understand and take from this, from the rally?
Well, I think part of it is and this is, I think, one of the reasons, there's different ways to communicate this, but one of the reasons of having the rally is just to show that there are a lot of people out there that deeply care about this, and we're gonna have people that have had, that have used nutrition and diet in a different, paradigm of health to reverse conditions. There's going to be people that are talking about that this is something that people do care about. Because I think that, it's a lot of people that are in positions of power, it's not necessarily something that's on their radar. So again, this is the first of many things to try and create that awareness for everybody. It doesn't matter kind of what level you're at. You can be at the highest level of business or government, or you can just be an individual citizen. But that's part of it. We're going to try and use the media and traditional media and social media to show that we have all. I mean, as far as just the optics, we have all these people out here, and they are very passionate, and that's part of it is just the optics of just a lot of people that are willing to go to DC, willing to participate because they deeply care about this issue. And so that's part of it.
Interesting. I'm about the most apolitical person that I know. And it looks like, from everything I've heard, from everybody's been talking about this is about as bipartisan as possible. Really doesn't matter what party you're going with. Everybody's affected by this, of course. Have you observed any like political slant in one way or another, or
we
just
really
avoided
haven't.
that?
And part of it is, and you hit on the head, is this really is a nonpartisan. It's a nonpartisan issue. And so, I mean, we are very nonpartisan. It doesn't matter where you are in the political spectrum, or if you don't even care about politics, because everybody has to deal with their own health. And so, and that's one thing that I love. One of the many things I love about it is politics doesn't matter, and we don't really want to get involved with politics. I mean, if there's somebody that's in politics that also deeply cares and wants to help, we welcome that. But it's not a political thing at all. And I'm sure you agree with that. I mean, it doesn't matter where you are on that spectrum. We care about your health, and we know that if somebody wants to make changes, or maybe they don't have the right information, they deserve that information.
Yeah, I love that. No, it's fantastic. To observe that so far that has avoided some of those political pitfalls, I think, is really wonderful and fantastic. So what time is the rally? You mentioned it's on October 13th. I believe the time is from 3 until 4:30.
3. Well, we've had so many people that have joined as speakers. It's gonna start at 3 and go for probably a couple hours at this point. But yeah, it starts at 3 o'clock at the Sylvan Theater in the National Mall.
Gotcha. And then you mentioned some of the other events. Kind of, do those happen like before the speakers? Are they kind of adjacent to whatever is going to be going on there?
Yeah, I mean, it's we're still working out the kind of minute by minute itinerary. But yeah, there'll be some things before the speakers, and some after. There'll be some people that are going to be part of it that are going to just tell their story, and then just other just kind of celebratory and very positive messaging in terms of just the changes that need to occur. So yeah, we'll have a little bit in the next handful of days. We'll have a little bit better strict itinerary of like who's speaking what and what's happening.
Yeah, got it. You also mentioned media. Do you feel like this is getting enough attention in the media that you might have some more eyeballs of people watching the nightly news that will see what you guys are doing?
So we have people working on that, and thankfully we have also people that have good following that that have been starting to get the word out. So, I mean, there's going to be, probably, there's to be more than hundreds of thousands, probably millions of people that will be alerted to this. And then, yeah, and we're working with media contacts so that they can get there, hear about it, and, and spread it that way too.
Interesting. Well, I just think this is going to be a wonderful event. I'm sad that I'm not going to be able to be there living across the country. I think it's going to be wonderful, and hopefully it starts to generate a little bit more interest in this. And yeah, like you hope that people watching the news will see this and want to have a positive response. At the end of the day, you're right. It is a grassroots movement. And I think the expectation that this is going to pop up on a 90-second news blurb somewhere and that's going to change the world is probably not going to happen. But I think about people on the individual level, like you were saying, maybe somebody's walking by, maybe it's a tourist, and they just hear a bit of somebody's message, and maybe they were like you and like the depths of suffering and are now just learning there might be an alternative that nobody's talking about. I think it's really powerful what you guys can accomplish. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about how everything turns out.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I completely agree. I think it's taking the long-term view, and it's just not one or a few things. It's probably hundreds or thousands of different things that will create that bigger change. So, and I appreciate, again, all the work that you do. It's just, the work that you're doing is amazing, and it all matters. And yeah, so it's amazing. And I appreciate the opportunity today just to talk and tell my story, and then also kind of what we're passionate about.
That's been awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, we all have our role. We all have our part in getting this story out. And it's funny, since my wife and I started our business, one of my favorite parts, I forget about it all the time, but my favorite parts is like, you're kind of making it up as you go, but that means that you also don't have limitations and you can do whatever you want, however you want. Like, it's kind of up to you. Like, as we were planning this episode, I'm like, we release episodes on every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I'm booked out for 5 weeks before I realized, like, wait a second, this is my podcast. I can put this out anytime I want. And it's fun to be creative and think about what the possibilities might be. And you've got this like really unique kind of position where here you are at the precipice of just starting this nonprofit and thinking about what it can be. What is your vision? Again, not just the practical things, but the vision of what you guys can accomplish with Metabolic Revolution.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think about that a lot, that sometimes I'm like, well, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, but then I'm like, well, I think I can bring some other things. And maybe the fact that I haven't been in this area for decades, I can look at things a little bit differently without, like you said, without some limitations. And so that's actually very exciting, because I can, I have more of a marketing background. And I think that in a sense, we do have to kind of market this. We do have to advertise this. So I'm kind of excited about that aspect of what I can help, and just a little bit different perspective on it.
Yeah, well, this has been a fantastic chat. I'm going to tell you on record in front of all of our listeners that you need to do this a lot more. You are a fantastic guest. You have an amazing story that was really dynamic and something that I was not as familiar with. And just to find other people out there that are so lit up by this one topic that is literally saving lives and stopping suffering for people all around the world is amazing. And I'm so grateful to have gotten the chance to chat with you and hear your story and be able to share that here. I'm so much looking forward to what you guys are going to be able to accomplish in the future. But so much looking forward to this rally again on October 13th. It's going to be super exciting. I just saw this morning that Jessica booked a spot to come on our show afterwards, sometime in October, maybe about a week or so after the event. So we will be able to host her and get a recap of the account and see of the rally and see what comes next for you guys. But as for now, where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you and your work?
Yeah, I mean, the website for the nonprofit is metabolicrevolution.org. It'll have, updated information on the rally. And then as we kind of develop more of what our vision is and the other things that we're going to be doing. So that'll be the best place for people to check us out.
Yeah, it must feel good also when you're on social media and you see how much this is getting passed around from some of these legends who have been in the space for far longer, and they have huge followings.
Yeah.
When Tro posts about it or Nina posts about it, it gets shared around on Twitter. Like, you're getting so much free exposure from a bunch of people who are bought in, who also have tons and tons of followers. So I hope that also helps the cause. You got to be pretty grateful about that.
It is super grateful. Yeah, I mean, it's happening very quickly, but it shows the willingness of people in this area to support each other, and that their passion for wanting to get this change. So
Yeah, I love it.
Cool.
Well, Steve Fields, this has been an awesome conversation. We're so happy to be taking our part and getting this out there and sharing it, just coming on our little dog and pony show. We really appreciate you taking the time to do it. Again, your story was amazing, and I'm so much looking forward to having more, content around yourself, the story, and of course the nonprofit and what you and Jess are doing. So thank you so very much again for taking the time out of what must be a very busy week for you to share about this. We'll get this up as soon as possible, but thank you so very much for coming on our show today. We really appreciate you. Yeah, thank you very much. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.